in the international arena to be successful. So now I'd like to turn to the third and final part of what I'd like to chat about tonight, and that's what I've been doing to give back to others and to the world since I retired. I have been fortunate enough to have done well in my career, and I'd like to spend the rest of my life now giving back. And in a way, spending 2 days here is, in a little way, giving back. I had a lot of people help teach me, so if I can help in some way to share some knowledge, that's fantastic. That's what I'd like to be able to do. So what I'd like to do now is to turn to some work that I've done since retirement. And because, if some of you want to stand up or move a little bit around, that's okay. It's not going to bother me because it's a little bit hard to see. I grew up in Sierra Leone, so a good place to start, and where do I give back my time and my effort in my own mind, and I talked about this for several years with my wife before I retired. I picked Sierra Leone as sort of a bullseye of what I would like to spend time doing. And I've worked in two areas in Sierra Leone. One is with World Hope. Now, who knows about World Hope? Show of hands. So again, about half. It is a faith-based organization. It's a non-governmental organization, or an NGO. It's based in Washington, D.C. Joanne Lyon, who's currently now chairman of the Wesleyan Church overall, helped to found it to bring hope around the world. And it's a good organization. And the second is Global Partners, which is what the Wesleyan Church calls its world missions. So what is World Hope? Basically, it was founded, like I said, about, what is that now, 18 years ago. And they have 3 words in their brochure. So what I like is they're focused. They're focused around opportunity, dignity, and hope. So let's give people opportunity. Let's not just give them money. Let's give them dignity in everything they do. And let's provide a little bit of hope. So I think that's a good little 3 words. They work in about 20 countries around the world serving the poor, and they're very active. One of their biggest markets is Sierra Leone. So what do they do around the world? Well, again, they're very focused. You will not notice medical up there. They don't do medical because it takes a lot of expertise to do medical. But they work in things like anti-trafficking. That's anti-slavery. So slavery still exists around the world today. So they're very, very active, and they go into communities and educate. When the rich uncle comes into town and offers to take your 14-year-old daughter to the capital city to get a job, you better be thinking about what a rich uncle this is that you have. So people are taken into labor bondage, prostitution, and so on. So there's big active work on anti-trafficking, education, big in education. Again, educating population in countries where they aren't as well educated on about HIV and AIDS and how to prevent that. There's a Hope Corps, which is a volunteer group. There's microfinancing, which I feel has been very, very effective. Rural development, that's drilling wells, malaria nets, those types of things. Orphan trusts, and Hope for Children. And like I said, that's pretty focused. So I was working on a very special project with them called the setting up of a special economic zone in Sierra Leone. A special economic zone is a tax-free port where you can import and export, but the idea is to create a manufacturing zone, and that zone will hire tenants to come in and build businesses and make things and export them and create jobs for the community and contribute to the economy as a whole. No other NGO in the world has ever done that. It's always been done by businesses or countries. China did a whole bunch of them way back when, which is how they really got on the map, these SEZs. So the risk and the reward is huge, and the commitment we made, I was part of the negotiating team with, really led by Jon Lyon, who's a Houghton grad. I don't know if he's still on the board, but he was, to negotiate with the government of Sierra Leone. The president of the government of Sierra Leone is a Wesleyan, and was born in Kamakwi Wesleyan Hospital, so he was very supportive of this. It's a $20 million investment, but the idea here is that international firms invest and get tax advantages, but you need a lot of government cooperation. That's a brochure that we did for exporting out of Sierra Leone. And this is the mission of the group. Step back and read. The mission of First Step is to help jumpstart the economies of the poorest developing countries through public-private partnerships that attract labor-intensive export processing industry to those countries while building the capacity of local institutions to provide services that will enhance the developmental impact of the industry and safeguard labor rights and environmental protections. So we worked very strongly with the government of Sierra Leone. We set up a 99-year lease on a 50-acre site. Originally, they were going to give us the land, then they thought about it, so we said, why don't we do a 99-year lease? Somebody said, well, what do we do when the 99-year lease runs out? I was on the group. I said, well, 99 years ago, World War I had not started yet. So I think if we get a 99-year lease, we'll see how it goes, and we can deal with that 100 years from now. So no rent, no taxes. The big thing is that all of the investment from this site, and this is a really big site, 50 acres is bigger than you think. It's like 60 football fields or something. So those are all, this is just a design of where the buildings might go. The president cut the ribbon, and Houghton College is working with some of its students. Professor Okerson, they're over there now, right now, helping with the mango processing and the growing of pineapples and making sure they get from the fields into the first factory that opened there. Very active for Sierra Leone. There's a picture of the first 1/8 of the site that was being cleared, and there's the president of the country cutting the ribbon. There we go. You can see it right there. That's good. Yeah, absolutely. And that was being constructed when I was there, so there was the entrance of this 50-acre site. One thing I will mention, I think it was on one of the slides, hard for me to see my slides here. The idea was that this would make profit. So the special economic zone would yield a, quote, profit. But what we put into the contract with the government of Sierra Leone is all profits will then be returned to World Hope in Sierra Leone for the benefit of the Sierra Leonean people. So we want to run this in the black, not the red, but when it gets to the place where it's making money, we hope it's $1 million, $2 million a year, whatever it is, that money will go for all of those efforts that I was talking about, well drilling, anti-slavery, so on and so forth, because World Hope's got a very, very big presence in Sierra Leone. So at the end of the day, it's an economic business, but the profits go to helping people. All of the profits go to helping people. The second thing that I got involved with was what's called the Kunshu gravesite and the first mission house in the middle of Sierra Leone. So the missionaries arrived there in the 1890s, and they located up country in what at that point was a malarial zone. And 10 early missionaries, there'd be like 2 or 3 at a time, and then 2 of them would die, and then 2 or 3 more would go, and another one would die, and so on and so forth, because it was before they had medicines and they even understood that it was malaria. Just like when they did the Panama Canal Zone, they knew they were fighting something, but they weren't sure what it was, and it was yellow fever, and there weren't vaccinations or anything. And malaria still kills, I read today, malaria kills someone in the world every 45 seconds. Somewhere in the world, every 45 seconds, somebody's dying of malaria. Hard to believe. So anyway, these missionaries were buried there and built the first, the first mission house there. So this is a picture of the grave site that I took out of a book that an old missionary had that she'd gotten from somebody else. And this is a picture of the grave site that I estimate was taken around 1915 or 1920. Look how well kept it was. Okay, so there were 10 missionary graves there. People gave their lives, went over there and gave their lives. And these particular missionaries, these 2 missionaries here, were associated with Houghton. I don't remember their names, but they were associated with Houghton and had gone to Houghton here in the late 1800s, shortly after it was founded. So, amazing connection. And this is myself, my father, the superintendent of the Wesleyan Church, and another missionary. And this was the grave site that we came across. just completely in shambles, overgrown, grave sites, gravestones broken, and it's been that way for years. Shirley went there and brought a tear to her eye as well, Shirley Mullen. Another picture. That's what it had gotten. That's how it had deteriorated. Broken stone, just sad. So I got to know the superintendent over there, Usman Forna. By the way, grew up a Muslim, saw the Jesus film, and converted to Christianity, went on and became a minister, and is today the head of the Wesleyan Church in Sierra Leone. 180 churches, thousands of members, in a country that when he was a boy was going the Muslim way, and actually Christianity has surpassed Islam in Sierra Leone in terms of influence. He and I chatted, and I said I would do my best to see what we could do to raise money to restore the grave site. We felt that it was going to take somewhere around $10,000 to $15,000. So one of the things that I did personally was come back and raise the money to rebuild the grave site. So that is the superintendent of the Wesleyan Church, Usman Forna, turning the first spade of dirt. There's some work that's going on in terms of rebuilding the grave site, building a new wall around it, and they wanted to build a big high wall. And that's where I showed my father, and he said, "We don't want a big high wall. We want a wall people can look over. We don't mind the wall, but let's not hide this." He wanted it behind a locked gate. I said, well, let's make sure it's visible. And then we went about building concrete platforms for all the stones in the same position as the gravestones were. And then we put a plaque at the entrance, and I said to my father, because I took him back to the hospital in Sierra Leone that he opened in 1958 for the 50th anniversary of that hospital. And he was 38 when it opened, and he went back, and he saw the old grave site and got behind this project as well. I said, you pick something to put on the plaque. And he said, he took it out of this very same book where I got those photographs. It was written by the father of a 5-year-old boy who is buried in that gravesite, one of the 10 people. And it's, "We have done the best we knew, we leave the rest to God. Pray for us." So that's on the plaque today. And that is the boy who, now that's the picture I took before the restoration, but that is the gravesite of the boy who died at 5 years of age of malaria. And that is the finished gravesite. That's the superintendent of the Wesleyan Church. So we put a nice wall around it, did all the work. The church is and parsonage is right next door, and they've committed to keeping it up. And there is the plaque with the names of those who were buried there. And you can see 1894, 1897, 1901, 1902. So, they've got their dignity back in death. And then the final slide I have for you today is the old mission house, which we're also restoring, which is now the parsonage. But this was the very first mission house in Sierra Leone, and we're restoring that. I'm going to whitewash it and make it look good again. So we're in the process of doing that. So that's a little bit about what I've been doing in terms of giving back. How am I doing? I'm running out of time. So my experiences in international have been exciting. I've talked about what I believe culturally it takes when you're dealing across diverse cultures. I've talked about the leadership traits that I feel that it takes to be successful internationally. And then I've talked about some of the things that I've been working on since I retired. So what advice do I have for you? You're young. Your working life's in front of you. It's exciting. You're going to have some choices to make, some easy, some hard. Hopefully your choices will be a bit better than the twist on an old saying by Yogi Berra, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. So what's my advice? First, you're doing exactly what you should be doing. You're getting a great education. You might say, "John, how'd you get where you are with a BA in English? What does Shakespeare have to do with China?" But basically, my answer is that the learning process of a great, diverse Christian liberal arts education will cause you to think better and make better choices. It's not what you study at this stage that really matters. It's just learning. And by the way, Houghton College stands for this. The most recent edition of the Houghton magazine, The Case, I think is a great example of a great liberal arts education. Is a fantastic thing. Second, I would tell you, know yourself. Know thyself. I don't mean I want to be a fireman when I grow up. I mean, who are you? What do you believe in? What are your values? Think ahead. When your life is ending, what do you want to have accomplished? I don't mean what's your salary going to be and what it's going to say on your business card. What have you contributed? And this all comes back to who you are and figuring out who you are at this stage of life. The third piece of advice I would give you is, even if you're not interested in an international career, and certainly if you are, travel. Go see the world. Go to Africa on a missionary assignment for a few weeks or a few months. Study for a semester in Italy or Spain or somewhere internationally. Take a long vacation in India. Work for 6 months in China. What I'm saying is, learn to understand what's going on in the rest of the world by living in those places for a period of time. This is going to broaden your horizons. It's going to challenge your beliefs, which is a good thing. And it's going to make you more tolerant. And you will learn, and you'll be a much broader and more understanding person for having done this. And finally, I would say, respect others, especially if you want to lead. So I've been fortunate enough, as I said, to work all around the world. We have great friends all over the world. I've helped people be more than they thought they could have been through my leadership, I hope, because I've always looked at myself really as a teacher or a coach, even though I was a leader of a business. And I'm now having a lot of fun giving back. So I'd like to thank you for sharing your supper hour with you. You could be studying. So I guess it wasn't that hard of a decision to make. And it's actually snowing out there now, so I don't know what's quite happening. But as I look back in closing, I realized that Houghton was part of making me what I am today. It was part of that learning process that I was talking about, and I'm thankful for that. So with that, I would say thank you very much, and are there any questions? So, thank you.
You touched on respecting cultures, and I was just wondering, what are some differences in marketing from one culture to another?
Differences in marketing. Marketing is really hard. It's, first of all, you have to have the right brand identity for whatever brand you're pushing. And secondly, within each region, you have to have the right brand positioning within the competitive set in the arena of that particular region or country. But when you get down to advertising and marketing, you really have to be cognizant of the culture. A lot of advertising, when it gets down to that, is good humor. It's done with good humor. It's done with little tricks. And you cannot translate humor, for instance. So you really need to, in each country or each region, if it's a place like China, because you've got Mandarin in the north and Cantonese in the south, you need to have your advertising be really locally driven underneath this umbrella of a great brand positioning and a great brand identity. So you have to be, you need a local agency to actually produce your advertising in each of these countries, which is not cheap.
Thank you.
Other questions? Quiet group tonight. Ken, how are we doing on time? We are getting close to where we need to.
Time for one more question.
One more question. All right, well, we'll have the...
All right, now being a Christian and everything, and working in the marketing world, a lot of the marketing and advertisements today are based off of stuff that we, as Christians, believe aren't the most Christian-oriented. So what are some ways that young markets their products as well as the Christian orientation?
They actually have a moral code for their advertising, that they won't step over a line of anything that's offensive or too sexual. I mean, there's still nothing wrong with a boyfriend and girlfriend kind of thing, but they will not get involved in advertising that could be perceived as truly off the rails from that perspective. So you're not going to see anything. And we all looked at this when we looked at our advertising. Sometimes you'd reject a script because you say, you know what, there's just a little bit too much innuendo there. Not that you don't have some fun. So judgment, the judgment word again. You know, it's when you get people calling in and saying, why did you run that ad? That you've probably gone too far. Not that there won't always be somebody who calls it, but I mean an outcry. So you're trying to avoid that.